Hey everybody, Jimmy with the Triple C Collective here for another commentary track. Today we're going to be diving into Speak No Evil. The original came out in 2022 and the remake came out in 2024. Joining me for this commentary track comparison is my longtime friend from high school, Mr. AJ Omi. AJ, say hi.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's AJ. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. It's been like 10 years since I saw you, so this is not only a shock to be on camera, but a shock to see you after 10 years. This is nuts.
Right, dude? I mean, I'm all like furry and stuff. All this hair is going to be gone March 8th for St. Baldrick's Day is
St.
when I
Baldrick's Day, yeah. All
yeah,
right.
when I shave it all. But dude, thank you for coming on. This has
Of
been
course, man.
great. Now, speak no evil. Let's take a step back here. Horror.
Yeah.
What does horror mean to you? As like, why do you like horror? Where did it start for you? Do you have a first film that ever like kind of set you off the deep end here?
Oh my God. So anything, horror to me, anything that gets your adrenaline pumping, that is what I look for when I watch a movie. I want to not just experience a movie for its visual. I want to feel the movie. I want to have that rush, the spine-tingling rush that you get when there's a jump scare. So to me, that is horror. Whatever can get my adrenaline pumping to make me feel like I'm terrified at the moment, that's what I yearn for when I'm watching a movie. I will say though, however, the first horror movie that I saw, and I'm going to get a lot of laughs for this, was when I was probably like 6 or 7 when The Goonies came out, which is a PG movie. Yes, let's
Mm-hmm.
be clear. This is a movie about a ghost ship. But there's a deleted scene that not a lot of people are aware of, and if you owned a special VHS copy back in the day, you saw this deleted scene, and it was the scene in the end when they're all getting pushed off into the water and off the boat, and then but in the water there's this octopus. And it sounds like a fever dream, and if you watch it, you're gonna be like, this is ridiculous. But as like a kid, that was absolutely terrifying. I remember being terrified to take baths, go in open water, because the thought of something like grazing my leg, nope, nope, couldn't do it. Nope. So
Yeah,
that is the Goonies would have to be my first. That was when I really dipped my toes into the horror genre, so to speak.
that is so awesome. So the water thing is very interesting because like I don't know if I have like necessarily a first horror film that I've ever watched or if I have a real memory of it, but I know to this day I am so uncomfortable in the ocean because of Jaws.
Yes.
Because Jaws is in the ocean. And fuck that shit, man. I ain't going in no ocean with no Jaws. Like I can be like I could be uneasy around like a lake or something, especially like in Florida, because I'm like, well, Lake Placid. Seen that one too. You ain't getting me. And like Anaconda. So like it's actually all of these like animal horror movies from the 90s. And well, Jaws is from 75, but like all of these other movies that like kind of scarred me because like
Yeah.
they were on just like cable and stuff, or like people would just like one of my uncles would just like rip the movies from his laser disc to the VHS and just like hand them to my parents and stuff.
Yeah.
And like so we'd watch like whatever it was. But yeah, Jaws like to this day, like I will like I'm not going in the ocean. Like I will
Yeah.
barely step my feet in the ocean. Like
Oh,
want I want no part of that. Want no part of that, Dewey.
Jaws did such an amazing job at, because if you look at how much time the actual shark was on screen, it's a very small amount of time.
Mhm.
All the fear from that movie came from not knowing what was below the water level that you couldn't see. And that was like the most emotionally terrifying part of that movie, is like you never know what's underneath the surface. It could be, there could be a giant great white shark and you'd be none the wiser, because it's just they're so, what's the word I'm looking for? They're so incognito.
Right.
You don't know them that they're there until you're dead.
Right. Well, I mean, it's even something like you put in your notes, or like for other movies of like even for like Speak No Evil, the original of
Yeah.
like the frog boiling in water. Like you put
Oh
it in
yeah, yeah.
boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you slowly turn up the heat, like it'll allow itself to cook to death.
Yeah, you'll have frog
And
legs for dinner.
So it's so funny though about Jaws in particular because there's two jump scares that were like kind of meant to be jump scares in it. The
Yeah.
one is the Ben Gardner face in
Yeah.
the bottom of the boat. Sorry if we're spoiling a movie that is
It's 50 years
50
old
years
now.
old
Yeah,
now.
I think we could spoil it.
I mean, it's older than both of us, so
Yeah.
like, like whatever. But the beauty of like Jaws is like, or something that annoyed Spielberg of what he did is because he did that, and then at the end, I believe it's like when when Jaws is first pops up when they're throwing
When they're
out the
throwing the chum
chum.
in the water and he
Yeah,
turns
yeah,
around and
and he
then
turns around and stuff. That was supposed to be like the second. That was supposed to be like another one, but
yeah.
Spielberg wasted the good surprise on the Ben Gardner boat, and so everyone reacts to the Ben Gardner face earlier in the movie as
Yeah.
opposed to like him wanting that second scare. And it's something that he says that he learned from that of like holding off on like the big reveal, like that big scare until the end. And
Which is
like,
so interesting that when you look at a movie in that sort of sense, like a structural sense, and like where do I want my reactions to fall within the movie and how much of an impact do I want that to have? So I mean, it's obviously something that you probably can't discover until hindsight's 2020 and you're looking back on it and
right.
seeing the effect that it has. But that's interesting that Spielberg felt that way, that that he was somewhat regretful because the bigger scare then was doled down in a way.
Yeah.
But
And
I
so
get it. I'm still terrified of this day, but
yeah, I mean, my wife and I last year they re-released Jaws again for like the 49th or whatever year anniversary, maybe even a few years ago now, but they played it in an IMAX theater near us in like the Quarry or whatever here. And it was like a $5 ticket because they like were selling it a ticket at the price of like what it was in like
back in the day.
1975 or whatever. So it was like $5. We saw fucking Jaws on an IMAX screen. Like it was the greatest day of my life. That movie still hums. And you know what? It's structurally, I love it on how the original Speak No Evil. Let's kind of dive into that now. The
Yeah.
original Speak No Evil is a Dutch Danish production that I remember I first heard about it from Sean Fennessy on the Big Picture podcast. It's a wonderful
Mhm.
podcast from The Ringer. It's on Spotify or wherever you can find their shit. But in particular, he was like, I saw this movie at Sundance. It really fucked me up. New parents should not watch it. And I was like, well, I've got to watch it
Let's do
now.
it.
I've got to watch it. My daughter was like 2 years old. And like, so I watched it, and that movie, like, I mean, it just fucked me up. Like the
Yeah.
original Speak No Evil just
And
messes with me. How
it's
about you? Where do you first hear about it as well and
I
see
first
it?
heard about it. Well, first to backtrack a little bit, it's amazing to think that the original movie came out in 2022, and then 3 years later, a remake, which was basically verbatim, is just mind blowing to me. It questions like how necessary was that, but in the end, I'm sure money making schemes were a big part of the reason why the movie was remade for an American audience, because they saw how successful it was, on the underground scene, which is where I first heard about it. It was a creator, I think it was on TikTok actually, and I wish I remembered his name, but he oftentimes would go over low-key hits that are kind of like sleeper cells that you're going to see throughout the
Mm-hmm.
year that not necessarily are going to get a lot of press, not necessarily a lot of discussion on award season, but it's going to be the one of those ones that you'll remember and that will sit with you. And I always, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, sign me up.
Sign me up,
Yep.
please. Um, that's so great. That movie, though, that me-
Fuck.
that messes me up. But it's
But
also beautiful
it's
because
what makes
there's
it
no
perfect.
fat to it,
No, no.
right?
And,
There's like
and
no fat to it. It's 94 minutes.
yeah,
It's an hour and a half long. When you hit the 45-minute mark, there's literally a scene where they turn around in the car, and it's like literally
it's
the movie turns
turns
around
on it. Yeah,
again. and,
yeah.
and like, oh man, like
And
there's
you're
just
just like, you had your chance. But
right?
it brings you back to that discussion, it's the frog in the boiling water.
Hmm.
It's this slow car crash that you're visualizing. And, to a normal outsider, when you're looking at this situation, you'd of course be freaked out, but it's along the way throughout the movie, they just put in these small inconveniences that don't necessarily turn the family away and say like leave, 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 but it's enough to where it's off-putting, but not enough to where it's like sending a red flag like run. And that's where I think their downfall is that they're indifferent and they attribute a lot of these issues to like a cultural difference that they're adjusting to. Um, and because they're kind of passive in that, then it leads to their demise because then they end up getting boiled.
Right.
I say
So,
that figuratively. It's just
I
they
mean,
had their opportunities and they never
their
jumped out of
butts
the
are cooked
water.
by the end of it, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know how wrong you are. Like their butts are cooked.
Yeah.
But I will say we talked about it a little bit before we started recording here. That for the most part, both the original and the remake, for let's call it about the first 45 minutes of the about the first 45 minutes of the remake and about halfway through the original is almost beat for beat with even
Yeah.
just like dialogue being the same.
Oh yeah.
Starting out on like the Italian holiday, there's the return home, they get the invite, there's the arrival, there's the first day, and then basically somewhere in that first day, first night of their being there, that's where it really starts to kind of branch out.
Yeah.
um
It's where
and
The American film kind of takes its normal American turn. Like, okay, let's add some stuff into this that's gonna
it
fluff.
literally, I remember looking at the runtime and being like,
Same. I was like, this is 30
if
minutes.
this,
We're gonna get 30 minutes of fluff.
yep, and like we kind of get it.
Yeah.
But like I'll never forget looking at it being like, oh man, an hour and 50 minutes long. Why would you add literally like 36 more minutes to this
To
when
an
it's
already
like,
perfect story.
yeah, it's so good. So anyhow,
Yeah.
we'll get it. Like the Italian holiday is just like so funny.
Yeah.
The this original, like they've got like the loudmouth, like Patrick and Karin, I think is how you say her name.
Yeah.
They are like they arrive late or whatever. I love some of those shots though in that car of that approach.
The creepy,
Um,
yeah, the first scene.
like just kind of looking through like the rear view mirror of it
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. It's awesome. And that's probably one of the things that like I loved in this original one is that
Yeah.
the tension, the sound, and like the way that it just kind of keeps ticking. Again, like that the frog in the boiling water is like an amazing point to make, that like that you pointed out to it. Like it was something that I didn't even think. I was just like, it just kind of keeps cranking it up,
Yeah.
cranking it up, but you're like, it's just turning the heat up. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it's doing.
Yeah. There was nothing that came along that was too frightening for them. It was just like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable, but not enough to make me want to leave. And it's just, you're watching the movie and you're like, you're gonna die.
Right? Because at a certain point, you're like, at a certain point after that first day, like you have the like in the original, you have the wild boar like eating of the meat and just the
Yeah. Yeah.
complete ignoring of Louisa's
Vegetarianism. Yeah.
vegetarianism, whatever, being a vegetarian.
Vegetarianism. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word, but we can keep
Yeah.
on dodging, keep on moving along there. But like the Abel showing like his mouth of like trying to like talk, and that
Yeah.
is literally like the poster of him with his like mouth open, like ah,
Oh.
like ah man, it's yeah,
Yeah.
insane.
But yeah, I mean, and I think the children play a big difference in the original version versus the Americanized version too.
Yeah,
In the original version, you don't really see a lot of dialogue. You don't hear from the children quite a bit. They're less of a character and more of just like a bystander in the film that you kind of see along the way. I feel like they gave the kids in the American version a
they
little
give him more agency for sure.
yeah, yeah, they had a little more meat to deal with. So, I mean, it was nice to get that point of view because I feel like a lot of foreign films don't focus on like what it's like for the kids part of this, but Americans, I feel like have a good idea of like You know what? Let's see what the kids aspect of this is because that's even more terrifying.
It is. It's super terrifying for those kids. And like, they even in the original and the remake, you also have like that dancing scene where
Oh yeah.
like both Patrick in both of them, James McAvoy and the guy from the original, like it's kind of beating up on their kids. It's
Yeah,
tough to
yeah.
watch. It's tough. Everything about that is, the whole concept of the story is tough for kids. And like
Yeah, yeah.
that's like that was one of those things, like by the end of it, I was just like, oh my God. Like, what did I just watch here? But this is also like the original does a really good job of showing like the testament to like tolerance basically as
Yeah,
well, and like
yeah,
manners,
yeah.
like everything from the meet with the wife,
Hmm.
the small bed for Agnes, the awkwardness of like Abel and stuff after that first night, like when they have that dinner and they're all like driving home drunk, or like Patrick is always driving home drunk from that. They've
Yeah,
got the messed up, like I said, that the kids dancing and stuff, like all of
yeah,
that
yeah.
is just showing like all of these little things that just keep boiling over. And it's like you have all of the opportunity to
Yeah, yeah.
leave. Like at one point, you even do leave. Like they leave in the middle of the night and
And then
they,
that stupid bunny rabbit.
yeah, like I
But I
think
feel
it's,
like it's such a it's hard to describe the the passiveness of letting things go in a way that this movie does a very good job at exposing, I think, a big part of our personalities, especially as like millennials these days,
mhm.
where, I, for one, don't like to be inconvenienced by things. So say like if I buy like something and I return it, or if it doesn't fit and then I want to return it, sometimes I'll just like not return it because it's a hassle that I have to go to the store. Like, I'd rather just passively accept it as a loss and just say, you know what, I'll take the L. I'm not going to get my money back. I feel like that the original movie does a great job at explaining that type of behavior because the family's going through the same situation, not necessarily where not returning a shirt, but like you're not seeing red flags, you're not taking these hints and running with them. You're just ignoring them and saying, "Oh, it's easier to just let it slide and then we'll stay."
Yeah, but this weekend's almost over. We've only
Yeah,
got
yeah, the
one day
weekend's
left.
almost over. And they
Got a
attribute
day
so
and a
much
half
of it
left.
to like what I like in the first film is that, you see it from a Danish versus a Dutch perspective, and that's kind of
Yep.
where they that's kind of where the tension meets in the story. Whereas in the
Different
remake, I feel
cultures,
like
yeah.
it's more of like a masculinity versus like this pathetic, weak little dad who never really did anything for his kids. And then you have James McAvoy who's just like masculine, king of all things, super manly.
So
Uh,
funny thing about James McAvoy and his build for that movie, not originally intended.
Oh, wasn't it
The,
because he was
the, James McAvoy was just on an insane workout bender,
that's nuts.
like leading up to that movie, and then he gets the script and he just kind of keeps it up, maybe
Yeah.
even goes a little bit harder because he's already just starting to like bulk up on this, like because he gets to the point of like where he is almost in Split again, where he's playing like the beast and
Yeah.
stuff, like where he's in, like he's just huge
Which
in
that's I feel like it I feel like that's where the second movie, I don't know. I felt like that's part of the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much was because it took away from the character that they were trying to display and replaced it
mm-hmm.
with this James McAvoy character that, dare I say, like I've already seen in Splint.
Yeah,
Like it felt very repetitive watching him on screen going crazy because he did that in Split. Like it's very much one of his characters in the movie.
yeah,
Um, and I like having, when they put a big name in a movie like James McAvoy, who isn't like the biggest TV star, but he's a
he's
household
big.
name.
I mean, he was
Um,
Charles Xavier in the new X-Men stuff.
oh yeah, yeah. Like
He's got a friend, and like the
he's
other thing
he's
is like
known.
he also had to stand up to Patrick Stewart and nobody
Oh
shits on
yeah.
James McAvoy
Yeah, yeah.
because he does a different version of
Yeah.
where you fall in line with Patrick Stewart is different, but like he doesn't like nobody. I don't know a single fan of the X-Men stuff that are like James McAvoy sucks as Charles
No.
Xavier. People like him. He
No, no.
he does
He's
all right.
he's an amazing actor. I don't discredit him at all. It's just I feel like this role would have been the message in the movie would have been better communicated had it been somebody who was lesser known because you wouldn't be
Mhm.
staring at the screen saying like, oh, that's James McAvoy on screen. It'd be, oh, I'm focusing more on like the actual plot. I have the same issue with like Leonardo DiCaprio. I can't see that man in character. All I see is Leonardo DiCaprio on screen.
That's fair.
And it gets very distracting when I'm trying to really pay attention to the storyline of a film. So, but I mean, he's still like amazing. He's an amazing actor. He's one of the best. I just think it could have been communicated differently, and he may have just chosen the easy way out because it was something that he had already had in his wheelhouse, I guess.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Um, and like even in the original, like the Bourne and Patrick character, like they're more or less about the same size and everything. So like when they have their conversation, and they also have like different heart to hearts in these movies, you know.
Yes.
In the original, they're just talking about like doing the mundane thing of like going out to dinner
Which,
with people you don't even
yes.
like and stuff.
Just
And
being
like
performative and fake in real life. That's what I felt like that first movie really drove home, which was great.
mhm.
It's like, yes, everybody can relate to that. That mediocrity of like having to hum along and just like, follow the gestures and smile along and
Keeping up with the
it's so
Jeffersons and
mundane.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
so yeah. And that is enough for the storyline. It didn't need anything else. And I felt like the second movie added to that scene and it was just not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, because they both end up like screaming out their lungs of being like, if you keep stuff bot and like, like to be fair, that's not a bad point of being like keeping
No,
your
no.
emotions and like things bottled up, like go to therapy, talk about that stuff, like let it
Yeah.
out. Because both of them are like it will eat you up from the inside, and both Patricks in both movies are talking about it because they are
Yeah.
literal killers.
Yeah.
Like they are terrible people. They have done horrific things to kids and to other people's like families and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they are not good people. So they understand the idea of like being eaten up from the inside out,
Yeah.
which
That's
is just insane.
that's kind
Uh,
of too where you think about then like the name of the movie comes into play. It's like, oh, speak no evil. It's like, oh, nothing really is evil until somebody brings it up. So, you go throughout the whole movie knowing that these people are terrible, but everybody's just kind of ignoring the bad sides of one another. And it's like, well, that's how evil just ends up winning because nobody's speaking up here. And
right.
nobody's bringing it up.
Everyone is seeing it and hearing it,
Yeah, but
but
nobody's
nobody's
saying a
speaking.
damn thing.
And I mean, I'll at least say that's something about the remake that I like at the end of the remake of like
Yeah.
where he's like, where James McAvoy's like, speak honestly, like
Yeah.
speak honestly. There are a few things that I really liked about the remake. The agency of the kids was like really
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
and to be fair, like the other thing then, so we've talked about it, like they have a series of events in the original and in the remake that basically is just testing those tolerances, manners, and like how people feel.
Hmm.
Once they decide to leave, though, that's where that's where both movies like really kind of start to split. Because
Yeah.
in the original, once they leave and they come back, there's 45 minutes left in that movie or
Yeah.
less, basically. It's like the perfect middle point of it. But then they're trying to leave, they fill up with gas, and then they get like ran off the road in the original. A new car like approaches, and
Hmm.
they see a random house with like a light on. Like all of
Yeah.
this just starts it's actually kind of interesting rewatching that. I was like, wow, this actually kind of gets into a little bit of like the horror movie like tropes
The
almost here
tropes of
with
it
like
all. Yeah. Yeah.
of like with that
The
lone
wading through
house.
water, the like your car's breaking down on the side of a low lit road. Like it's just
Yeah.
all those tropes. It's like finally.
And like for us, the viewer, like this whole movie, you should be screaming at like you're screaming at the leads, being like, "What are you doing? Why haven't you just
Internally, yeah,
left?
yeah.
Like, fuck the goddamn rabbit, fuck it." Which is something that I like. Again, I like in the remake that they destroy the rabbit when they put the rabbit is already destroyed from an animal when they take it off the roof.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's very interesting. It's also interesting that the broken rabbit gets given to Abel at the end of that.
Ooh, I didn't catch that. I
At the
wonder.
at the end of the remake,
Yeah,
she in the card she hands right, they call him Abel in the remake too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so he gets that torn up bunny,
yeah.
just like his life has been torn up
Torn up, basically.
more or
Yeah,
less. But the thing you see is that her arm, she's not scratching on her arm, she's just kind of like almost rubbing it a little bit, and like
yeah.
he's just like got a death grip on that rabbit.
So
So
she
it's
doesn't
almost
need
kind
it anymore. He does.
yeah, he
Yeah,
needs that comfort now. So like she's grown up,
yeah, yeah.
in it. Which
Which
is
is
crazy
like,
to think.
why couldn't you have that realization when you were in the car escaping? Why didn't you have that like, oh, I don't need the rabbit anymore?
Well,
That's when she needed to grow up.
right, that's when she needed to grow up. But like
Yeah.
to be fair, that's at least in the American remake. That's where we get our nice heroic American ending
Yeah, the arc.
of
Yeah.
Abel being saved to them.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because
Which,
that's a
oh,
tough thing when you see it in the original,
oh,
and
him just floating.
Bourne is just walking around right before he sees, or no, it's right after Bourne sees all of the luggage, the cameras, and then he sees the photos of all the families and stuff, and you
Oh,
just
yeah.
see, because then he's walking out in like tears, being like, "I have fucked up. Like
Yeah.
we should not have been here anymore." And then Abel is face down
Floating face.
in their pool, and it's just like,
Holy shit. Yeah, you feel the shift, but then you feel this immense anger, and it's like, well, what did you expect as the main character? Like, you've been walking around ignoring everything this entire movie, and it's like, of course, like that's why I feel like the ending of the first movie is so it's very difficult to watch, but um it's very satisfactory. I get the satisfaction of it because I'm like, he deserved it at the end. He did nothing that entire movie. So the way that it ended, and if we can talk about the ending freely, we can just say
yeah.
like, they get stoned to death. It's like, oh great, that was the ending that he deserved. And then the American version just takes it one step further to create that hero arc, add all this fluff into it, and then it shifts the focus then of the whole message of the movie, I feel like, and it turns it not necessarily into a bad movie because the story is great still. It's like the kid gets the heroic arc and whatnot, but like that message in the first film is lost then. So
Well, right. I mean, because not only do they get stoned, you legitimately, now this might be anyone who hasn't seen the original Speak No Evil at home. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a super disturbing part of the movie. It is by far the most disturbing part for me. I probably of any other part, but like you see the little girl Agnes in the original, you see her tongue get cut like how
Ooh, yeah,
Abel's was, and
yeah.
it is disturbing. You
Ugh,
see it,
yeah.
you see it done. It is messed up. It is by far the most disturbing part of that movie, and it's just like, holy cow. I And it's one of those things, and then seeing the stoning, because what happens, like let's talk about the stoning of that first one. They're stripped naked. Well, they're
Yeah,
told to just strip naked, and then they walk down into a quarry that is more or less filling up with like
a
water,
grave.
maybe some kind of oil or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
weird little like thing there, but they're just then big rocks are just literally hurled at like something out of like the Bible or whatever. Like it's just
And the
insanity.
and the one of the parts that really, and actually I don't even know if this is true, but like thinking back on it, I don't think there was a lot of score in the background. It was all you heard was just the thud from like the rocks hitting their flesh, which is a very uncomfortable sound to hear repetitively, knowing that it's like causing immense damage to them and killing them. But there's nothing like to drown it out in the background. It's just kind of this silent scene where you're hearing rocks hitting people, and it's
It
not,
is
it's so uncomfortable, but
it
that's the
is
point in the movie, you know?
and you see them get hit a few times. Now
Oof.
music does show up, but it's not until they get knocked down.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And so they get three or four rocks thrown at them while they're standing, and then
yeah.
Louisa gets the rock to the head. She
Oh,
goes down. When she gets hit in the head like that, that's when the music starts to pick up a little bit, and then Born, I think, is hit in like the shoulder slash like neck area almost, and he goes down, and then that's
yeah.
when the music crescendos and like
Swells, yeah.
yeah, the score kind of comes in there, and like it's just all of that, and oh man,
And then you think like, oh, there's gonna be another scene, and it's nope. That's
nope,
how
it's
it
not.
ends.
Now it's at this point in the remake we can flip over to the remake because again, it's virtually all the same.
Yeah,
They you get a little bit more, you get some extra time in the Italian holiday of them all hanging out together, whereas again, all of this stuff is a little bit fillery. You get a little bit more in that Italian holiday. You get the addition of the kids having agency. And then probably the biggest addition is the cheating between
yeah,
Louisa and Ben in the remake, and like the sexting and seeing
yeah, yeah,
another dick on his wife's like phone or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
like all of it. It like so the extra time in Italy doesn't really bother me that much.
No,
The kids having agency, actually a cool concept. Like
yeah.
I really like that. The whole sexting cheating thing is literally dumb.
It was just
Like
it was pointless. I don't understand why they went in with
it's
that
literally
storyline.
that is an additional 10 minutes that does not need to be there, like overall throughout that movie, 10 to 12 minutes that
Yeah,
doesn't need to be there, and then that drops that movie down from 150 down to about 140, and that only puts it at 6 minutes longer than the original, and that is a better remake.
yes, I
Like
agree.
like really ultimately it is. Again, like you could probably do without the extra like Italian stuff, and you get but basically you get the same thing. Like they get back home, they have like they're in the original there's a dinner with like friends of the family, which makes point to that conversation later. They
Yeah,
don't really have that here. They just kind of get the invite and go.
yeah.
And it's duck as opposed to boar or whatever, and
Oh
like
yeah, the wild duck.
Libby the duck, the
Libby the
prize
duck.
goose. But it's like that's some of the like craziness of it. I also don't like that it's Americans living in London,
It
you
that
know?
was the other thing I felt like they missed on was like as an American, I feel like we understand British people enough to where we wouldn't be like the Danish and the Dutch have very different cultural practices to whereas
Right.
if a Dutch person were to visit a Danish person, you may have to like think about, oh, I hope I don't offend them or like, oh, this is just their custom. But like Americans and British people aren't super different. Like I understand British people. I probably have heard of a lot of British customs and that gets lost in I feel like that's a big part of the movie because, in the first film, they are trying to respect those differences a lot. And I feel like that's where they're walking the line a lot in the movie is just to, not offend the couple that's hosting them, because there's these cultural differences. But American versus British, I don't think there was enough of a cultural difference there
Yeah.
to walk a fine line on. It was another thing that just kind of got missed along the way.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Because now, to be fair, it might be easier for us because we're American, and the idea of like knowing Dutch and Danish customs, like for me, outside of my realm of like what I know,
Yeah, yeah.
if I know Dutch or Danish people, like I'm sorry, I probably didn't know that you were Dutch or Danish, and I don't know many of your customs. I'm sorry, but like whereas like English or Irish and stuff, that's kind of just like it's a big part of like where we grew up and
Oh
whatnot of like
yeah,
that
yeah.
culturally here, even in America, even on the south
Yeah.
side of Chicago and stuff. So I feel like yeah, a lot of those kind of things were just kind of in the air, for lack of a better word, from like where we
Yeah.
grew up. So yeah, I agree that seeing the cultural difference between an American and British, like if they had done this like almost made this movie like in London, that might have made more sense to me. but they
Yeah,
were out in the country again, which was like, I mean, you could be out in the country, like that could have been also like anywhere in like wooded area. That could have been in the Pacific Northwest here.
yeah,
In,
yeah.
like
It felt in the
could have
first movie that they were a lot more isolated, and then in the
hmm
second movie, that countryside didn't seem as, I don't know, it just didn't give the same sense of like we're in the middle of nowhere, no one will hear us scream.
right,
Whereas the first movie, I felt like you're in the middle of nowhere, no one's gonna hear you scream, and you're stupid. So it's like,
right,
you're
right. Um, and so this remake then again up until that first night they want to leave, they leave the bunny behind and everything. That's all basically the same. We get a little bit more from Ant, which is I really like.
Yeah,
Because they call him, it's actually Ant. That's right.
that's it.
It's
Yeah,
it's
Abel's in the
Abel in
first
the
movie.
original and it's Ant in the remake. And so Ant, he writes like the note, and like Agnes is like, "This is gibberish. It's a different language."
Yeah,
Like there are these nice little clues that I do like of like Ant trying to be like, "This is messed up." Like he lifts up his
all
shirt
the
again to
yeah,
Agnes and is like showing all the like bruises and stuff. The way that Ant like steals the keys from James McAvoy when he's like all passed out
oh yeah,
is
yeah,
like it's good stuff. It reminds you of like Goonies and whatnot,
yeah,
of like the little kids being on a mission doing something completely outside of like
yeah,
what any of the adults or whatever are going on and doing their own little thing. Like there was a little bit of Goonieism there. And
yeah, yeah.
so it's really funny that like unprovoked from me, you were like Goonies, Octopus, in our note, like as one of the horror films, because like you get a little bit of that here.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I will say that I noticed watching the credits, it said based on a screenplay by, and not based on the film
Wait,
by.
so this is the remake you're talking
The
about?
remake said it's
Has
based
based
on
off
the
the screenplay that was
screenplay.
based off the original book, but not like it wasn't
But
based off this original story. They just read the screenplay that the original
and so
film.
basically they remade the screenplay, which
Yeah,
also makes sense of like some people, because it like it's so interesting. I can only assume it's a random rights kind of thing of like people owning the movie fully with the script, or just kind of owning the idea of the movie.
yeah,
And maybe that's like kind of like the thing. Maybe the original creator who wrote and directed it as well, he wrote it with his brother,
yeah,
maybe his cousin, but either way he wrote it with like a family member, so maybe they were willing to sell the rights of the idea to the script, because I know for that original, the reason why it didn't play in theaters and only went to like VOD and played festivals is because they refused to cut it. They refused to cut that
Oh,
ending and all. He fought for it.
really?
Yeah, he was like, this movie needs to be this fucked up. It
Wait,
needs to. The original.
was the original X-rated? Was that why? I mean,
No,
because
it's
it's
not
just an
rated.
R rating, right? So
It's
it was
not
just
rated.
that it was too
It's
shocking
NR.
to them.
It is NR, not rated. So yeah,
Wow.
if you go back and check it wherever you like rented it from, it won't say rated R. No, the James McAvoy remake, yes, is rated R, and we've kind of talked a little bit about the neutering of that, of like taking out
Yeah.
some of
Which
those
they
things.
didn't fully remove. I mean, there was the head bashing scene at the very end of the second one, which gave you just that little ta okay, there's the horror and guts of it all, but like
And you know
it
what?
wasn't
But
as
that is
satisfying.
that I see. I watching that the second time, it was very satisfying for me to see Ant do it. Because if it would have been
See, I just
Patrick,
think it wasn't needed. I was like, ah, it just it gave, I love the idea of giving the kids more agency and having two plots that are, in the
yeah.
same film, but it's just, that that movie I felt was perfection if you kept it on a narrow road. The second it started diverting and into all these other storylines, you lose
Well,
focus
yeah.
of that main story. And I just and then you feel the need to change the ending. And that's why the first time I watched the original film, I mean, I can remember where I was sitting on my couch and the exact feeling that it gave me. And that's what I want out of a film. And I didn't get that from the second one because of all of that.
Oh no, for sure. The I get a lot of annoyance from that second film.
Oh,
Again, because like that whole cheating subplot line is silly. But I do like the kids' agency thing. I like the idea of Aunt and Agnes trying to figure it out, like a little
Yeah,
caper.
yeah,
All of that is really good. And so like I appreciate the I also rewatching the remake with Ant on like how he destroys James McAvoy with the rock at the end.
yeah.
It's also very interesting that he does not look down at James McAvoy at all.
Oh,
Ant
I
is
didn't even
looking
notice that. He was just looking
Ant
straight
is
ahead.
looking forward the entire time. And I can only imagine because like they're not actually they're taking pictures of like that kid just doing that to nobody being down there
Yeah,
because they're not going to traumatize a 13-year-old with the way that James McAvoy looks at the end of that
yeah.
like on screen or something. They're not going to do that. They're not going to expose a kid to that, or at least I hope not. But like that, like so, like he is looking forward, just screaming, like that, and it's almost like a kid throwing a tantrum, throwing their arms down, but he's got this big old rock there,
Yeah.
and and that's again seeing that is why part of Agnes hands over the like rabbit at the end while they're in the car and they just like get out of there. I did like that Ant doesn't die like drowning because they show him again. He gets tossed
Oh,
into
he
that
gets
lake.
thrown into the lake. Yeah, yeah. But
And,
I just, it was, I don't know.
well,
I
because I mean that whole third act, once they come back, once Ant gets thrown into the lake because they're about to leave,
and that's when they stop and
they
turn
have the
around.
messed up tire, they
Yeah,
get that fixed, and then they close the gate or whatever, and then it then stops going and being that horror movie that we were watching before, this like tension building one, to then it becomes like a home invasion movie where Louise, Patrick, Agnes, and Ant all lock themselves inside the house and are
yeah.
defending themselves. So like it's a weird tonal shift
And that, I
that
thought that was a weird when, they were getting chased back in by that guy with the gun, and then they all got
Mike,
out of the car, and her line was like, "There's a landline in the house." I was like, "That's not gonna like you're gonna call the police and they're gonna be here in less than 2 seconds because that's about as much time as you got." So it doesn't matter if there's a landline. I just felt like it took me out of the moment because it's like that's
I agree.
ridiculous.
I agree. It
You're in the
was
country in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, let's run inside and grab the land. Like it was just another thing that made me say in my head, like, okay, it didn't need to be in here. That like it was just they had to create another excuse to
to get
validate
them back.
why it was in there.
Hmm.
So
And like they also like the idea of them trying to light the one part of the roof on fire with the Molotov cocktail,
it's so pathetic.
like that was a pathetic throw, but that's not a bad idea. That roof letting
Yeah,
off
yeah.
that fire like that and that smoke is a decent idea, especially like we do see the car blow up from the bad like
He's
Molotov
like, you
like
blew up my car.
yeah, oh that's gonna cost you, and it's like oh my god, what are we doing here? Come on, are we kidding? I'm like come on. So like this whole movie just like kind of really falls apart for me in this third act, except for the
Yeah,
stuff with the kids. It's the only thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
that I really like, um, because it's all just like insane.
Yeah.
Um,
I just
McAvoy,
I wish I wish more people, didn't feel the need to have that ending. I don't know how to explain it, but like the ending in the original movie is so dark and disturbing, and I think people they were concerned about people leaving that movie feeling unsettled and carrying that with them. But that's the point of the movie. And when you add a hero arc to the end of the movie, you don't walk out of there feeling like, holy shit, what the hell did I just watch? You're like, hell yeah, that kid just got fucking vengeance on that dude. I
mhm,
just, there's an uneasiness that you're supposed to be left with after watching a film like this. And the American version just kills it in the third act. They just kill it.
it does, and it sucks, man.
Yeah.
That like it like
On its own, it's a good movie. I mean, I'd watch
yeah,
it. I would enjoy it. I'd be
you're
like,
right.
hell yeah.
I've
But
got a feeling anyone who hasn't seen the original that watches it or is just a fan of James McAvoy and has like season tickets for him, I'm sure
yeah,
you're probably liking it. I'm sure it's
yeah,
probably a decent movie and like that like home invasion twist at the end might actually even be really cool for you.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if you've been messed up by
Like
the
I'm still messed
original.
up. It's been like years. Like that's what that movie was supposed to do. That's why I watched that movie, you know?
Right? And like that's why I tell people to watch this movie, but I'm also like, don't watch this movie.
Yeah,
Like
with like watch this movie, but with like some context, be aware, like you're gonna be left, not being totally okay afterwards.
right? So one of our mutual friends from high school, Murph,
Oh yeah.
um, I told him about this movie.
Yeah.
And so he him and his wife just had a kid who's about 2 now. And like the kid might have been like about a year old, maybe like 9 months or something. And like I had just seen this movie and I was like, it's the most disturbing movie I've seen in the last 10 years. Like hands down, it like messed me up. And I was like, you have to see this movie. And I was like, wait a second, how old is your son? And he told me, and I was like, okay, wait about a year to see
Yeah.
this movie.
You're
It
not
might
ready
be
yet.
like that might be too fresh for you, but like
Yeah.
so yeah, I would say if you're a new parent, don't watch Speak No Evil and probably don't watch The Wild Robot. That shit might literally
Oh, I
tear you
haven't seen
apart
it yet,
from
but I heard everybody's like it's the Iron Giant of this generation. Like the Iron
without a
that
doubt.
was Iron Giant for me as a kid growing up. Like that movie was my heart and fucking
Did you watch
soul.
Flow yet?
Oh my God. I see I had a harder time watching Flow than I did Speak No Evil. I was having panic attacks for that fucking cat every 5 seconds.
Okay, I'm just glad that you watched Flow.
Oh, every moment
Flow
though, I was like on the edge of my seat, like, holy shit, get away from there. You're gonna drown.
Flow and Wild Robot are by far the two best animated films. Like Becky and I talk about animated films in our second pod, which by the time this releases, our second pod will be up for the
Nice.
Oscars. So go check that out. Actually, all three might even be out at that point. I don't really know. Um, but yeah, so Flow and Wild Robot by far the two best animated flicks from this year. I mean, Inside Out 2 is really good. Wallace and Gromit
Yeah.
is really good. And Memoir of a Snail is just the weirdest animated like movie that I've seen last year. Like it's just so weird. I love it. Like it's really good, but
Yeah.
it's super weird. So like they show like claymation nudity in it, and it's just not something I had on my 2024 bingo card for animated films. I just wasn't expecting it.
There's
And
no
it,
rules anymore.
I know there's really not. There's really not. Two claymation movies were nominated for best animated feature this year. We haven't had claymated
Claymation movie since
movies in like
when was the
10,
last
15
one?
years.
I think
Like,
probably the Wallace and Gromit that came out 10 or 15 years ago was the last one,
yeah, right.
which me and Becky saw in
Um,
theaters, by the way.
right. Curse of the Were Rabbit or
Oh yeah.
whatever. But anyhow, so all of that stuff is all to say that Speak No Evil, the remake, was a letdown. I saw this in theaters because like again, the original Speak No Evil, unless you saw it at a film festival or something, probably wasn't playing in a theater unless you've got a small boutique kind of theater in your city or near you that will play like unrated films like that.
Yeah.
Very few do because I would assume they're probably opening themselves up for like legal pressure or whatever of being
Yeah.
like
Angry
you
parents in the
expose
community.
kids to this stuff and it's like well whatever they had a fake ID.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. um, like it is what it is. But so let me ask a couple of questions here
Yeah.
before we wrap up our stuff for Speak No Evil. Favorite performance in both movies, who is it?
Oh, in the original movie, honestly, the husband. I mean the main husband in the original movie, not the crazy one that they're visiting. I could,
Born.
yeah, when he was explaining in the car the mundaneness of life, I was like, I totally get that. I understand you completely. I hate how performative people get. I just want like I just want to like scream into the void about how fucking nonsensical all this shit is that we're pretending to be these like people that we're not. So, and I think partially and due to his performance, he really delivered that message. So I would say he's definitely my top performer in the original movie. I'm not going to say James McAvoy in the sequel. I'm actually going to say the kid who played Ant in the second film, which again goes to show that that whole subplot line detours you from the original of the film. But I thought the kid did the best job in the second film. He really took that part of the plot and ran with it. Um, yeah, yeah. James McAvoy's great, but I think that
Absolutely. So like
split was pretty
you,
similar.
you're right. That the kid is probably the best performance, but I also love James McAvoy just going crazy. So like
Yeah,
I picked him
yeah,
for the remake. In the original, I like the guy who plays Patrick because if I'm being honest, he plays a like hiding sinisterness so
yeah.
well. Because like
James,
you
you see James McAvoy's sinisterness.
oh yeah,
The other character, it's subtle. It's like you get hints of it, but it's not in your face, which I thought
no,
was really well done.
because in the remake you get like cutaways and you get the chance to see like James McAvoy go and like get like
Yeah,
big
you see
eyes and
that
like kind
look,
of give you
yeah,
that like
that
crazy kind of
evil.
stare and everything. Whereas the guy who plays Patrick in the original is kind of like he's almost monotone the whole
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
but he's like he is like that flatness like that to like kind of keep people at ease until that dance sequence where he really kind of starts
That's
letting
almost where
out.
he's, yeah, that's where he almost switches. That's where you
Yep.
almost see uh that character's influence over the main character because you see in that where he's like, no, go, you dance one more time. But then you see James McAvoy really freak out, and and then the other dad kind of snaps out of it and is like, whoa, 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 no, this isn't right. Like you shouldn't be yelling at kids like that. But
Yeah.
he was very close to almost like fully switching and being, fully evil
What
at that point.
because in the remake, his wife Louisa even says like, like, oh, you'll stand up to me, but you won't like stand up to like him or whatever. Like when he says
Yeah.
like one more time. Um, okay, changes from the original. We kind of talked about almost all of this. It's like
Uh-huh.
really the kids have agency. I really
Yeah.
like the cheating subplot sucks.
Sucked. One part that I really was upset about that they left out in the remake, which I felt was very much, again, along with the storyline in the original film and sent the message very directly, was how uncomfortable they were in the car ride home from their dinner with in the original he's drunk, they're blasting the music, they're flying down the road aggressively, and it's not a short scene, like it's a few minutes you're in that car with them.
Yeah.
And you feel how uncomfortable it is because you're imagining yourself like as somebody in the back seat of that car.
Like you're clenched up, man,
Yeah, yeah.
during that. You're like,
And they didn't like it, they in the remake there was a brief moment on the way to the restaurant where they're in the car driving somewhat erratically, but it's only a quick blip.
yeah,
And that was such a good scene in the original because you felt like the chaos that was brewing underneath
yeah,
everything, and who was driving the car was the person who was running the whole show, and it was very um what's metaphorical in the sense, I guess.
yeah. I don't disagree. That is again that first movie, that original from 2022, is just a tight flick. You know,
Hmm.
94 minutes. It like you don't get much better than that. I talked about it in the pod with Becky about Flow. That movie's 85 minutes long. The original Toy Story is longer than Flow at
Yeah.
88 minutes. Like you just don't like these movies. The Speak No Evil, the Flow. Like you're just in and out, and but it's so captivating.
Yeah,
And
because
it's like at the at
if you can deliver that story in that amount of time, that's all you need. Like
mm-hmm.
you don't need to cloud everything.
You don't need to fluff it up
Yeah.
either. And which is the unfortunate problem of this remake. The biggest thing that this remake does wrong is it just adds unnecessary plot to it that is meant to make it like go down easier for American audiences.
Yeah, yeah.
That's for sure true.
I feel like they
It's
think I think they just think Americans are stupid, which I mean, granted, they are, but
yeah,
but I think they need to like add all this action and stuff. Otherwise, because they're like, oh, the Americans' attention spans are probably so short. they need action in order to like stay focused on something, which
right?
how much of that is true, honestly, probably a lot. We'll see.
I mean, like I don't know. I'm a fan of movies, so like I'll watch everything from the MCU, DC, and stuff to like the Speak No Evils, to the
Yeah.
Flows, to these like art house things and whatnot.
And like like
I like,
original Nosferatu, black and white, like silent picture.
oh man,
I'll
that
watch anything
remake,
if it scares me.
yeah, that remake of Nosferatu is really good.
So good. So good. It was so
Maybe me, you, and Becky will talk about that then. We'll
Lily
talk
Rose
about.
Depp, I mean, not to push nepotism, but that girl can fucking act her ass off.
She's really
Oh,
good in that. I've been a big fan. I'm a big fan of Yoga Hosers. It's not that great of a movie. It's one of Kevin Smith's least well liked
yeah.
ones. But like, dude, Kevin Smith directs his daughter, Lily Rose Depp, and Johnny Depp. So Harley Quinn and Lily Rose got to work with both of their dads on a movie. Like,
That's
that's pretty
sick.
fucking cool, man. Like that's pretty fucking cool. Like again, where other people land on that, I'm not here to discuss that. We can do
Yeah.
that. We can do that in a different pod. But I think that's cool. Like I like Jack Quaid. Like it's the nepo baby for sure. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of them. But like Jack Quaid's been working hard.
He's a great
Lily
actor. I
Rose,
mean, he was
yeah,
great in The Boys. I mean, I think, there's some nepotism's one thing. I don't, if they have the chops though, they have the chops. So I'm gonna watch them if
yeah.
they're interesting. I don't
I want to
care.
see. I want to see Companion with him.
Companion, I heard is. Oh wait, no.
Yeah.
Wait. Is
Yes.
Companion the new horror film that just came out?
With Jack Quaid.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
yeah. I want to see that. I want to see the monkey.
The Monkey looks good. I love Stephen King. Part of the reason
So
why
did you watch Longlegs?
I love Long Legs.
Okay,
I've
so
watched Long Legs. I've
this is
watched Long Legs probably about 7 or 8 times. That's how much I love that fucking movie. That's what
nice.
I mean,
Okay,
though. Those are the movies that disturb people and leave an imprint on your psyche, and I love that shit.
Osgood. So Osgood Perkins, Anthony Perkins' son, who
Yeah,
also starred in Legally Blonde,
yeah, yeah.
as he directed Longlegs and he directed The Monkey. The
Okay, yeah.
Monkey's his follow-up flick to Longlegs.
Which I heard is
Um,
just like it's one of those movies that people are walking out of the theaters of because it's too much for them, and I'm like, perfect.
yeah. So I need to I want to see the new Captain America. I want to see that. Oh, I saw Presents.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Um,
still haven't seen Presents, but that one looks terrifying. Is
it's
it? See, the thing is though, is that nothing really scares me. I still appreciate jump scares, but I wish there hasn't been a new genre that's come along that has like piqued us an untouched part of my fear. You know what I mean? Like everything has been pretty dulled at this point now that I'm 35.
right.
Um, but like I can tell you like along the lines that there were shifts cinematically that when they originally happened, it opened up this whole new box of like fear for me. And that was when like the paranormal activity films started coming out because that was like all this, oh, found footage stuff. It's new, it looks real in a theater. You're like freaking the fuck out because it's so jump scary. But then you get used to it, and then you're like, oh, now I need something new to come along. And I'm waiting for that new genre to like come along that's really gonna make me shit my pants, you know?
Yeah, right. But you're right. Like horror's in a really interesting place because we've got this elevated horror that, like the Ari Asters
Oh yeah.
and the Robert Eggers are doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um that they say, I mean, even Long Legs is like something completely different than like
It's
we've
so
ever really
unique.
seen before.
Yeah.
Strange Darling, Abigail, like all the, I mean, even Megan,
I
like,
saw the TV Glow, which was like,
oh,
if you've ever seen, if you are to watch a movie from 2024, that is the movie I would tell people to watch. Watch I Saw the TV Glow. Watch it more
absolutely.
than once.
Absolutely.
And if you
Great
need to,
flick.
dive into a subreddit and really figure out all the nuts and bolts of that movie because it is intense and it is so good. So good.
It's very good. Um, so yeah, let's see. So I think it's safe to say that we prefer the original
Yes.
Speak No Evil to the remake. When it does come, because like I said, I saw the remake in theaters, didn't see the original. I would love to see it if anyone ever plays it in a theater. I'll go put myself through that again, I guess. Because like, don't get me wrong, like watch it. It's a great flick and it's so disturbing, but like it
Yeah.
takes a lot out of you emotionally too. Like
Yeah, yeah.
for me, I'm just always like
Yeah, yeah. You feel
after
like
it.
you walk out of there feeling exhausted, and that's just because like you've just seen too much.
Yeah, right. So for you, do you have a preferred way to see movies at home or in theater,
It depends
premium
on
formats?
it depends on the style of movie. So when it comes in particularly horror movies is what I'm speaking to, but um it depends. So there are certain movies that I feel like the fear is heightened when you see it with a crowd, and those are going to be your jump scare movies because you can feel the tension in the audience around you, and it builds when it gets to that point where the jump scare
Mm-hmm.
happens. But then there's movies where you need to watch them in a room by yourself with the lights off because that's where the fear comes from. Those are going to be like your under the bed movies, like your poltergeist movies, movies that are going to get into your brain, and it's only going to be effective is if you're watching it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you watch it with somebody, it takes away the point of the fear. Like the whole point
Because
of
you might be reacting to somebody else's fears and not
right,
your
yeah,
own.
yeah. And like if I'm watching a movie, like if I'm watching The Ring, I want to be alone watching that movie because that's when I get terrified. It's like, oh, I'm alone watching. Or like The Sixth Sense is another film that again, a
Mm.
lot of people don't speak to it as a horror film, but it is a horror film for me, and
Oh, it absolutely is.
I can,
I mean, it's a
oh,
ghost story for sure.
yeah, yeah. I just
Sorry,
feel like
spoilers for that.
people watch oh yeah. People watch that movie and they think it's I don't know, it's maybe it's too long or something, but that was Sixth Sense was always a movie to me that one it's the only movie that gave me trouble sleeping at night. And two, looking back, was probably one of the most brilliantly executed movies, detail wise, score wise. Really, M. Night Shyamalan's just like bread and butter. Everything else after that was garbage, but not everything, but a lot of it was. Um,
Mhm.
but like movies like The Sixth Sense really, really stuck with me, and I carried that with me, and I compare a lot of movies that I've watched today to that film in regards to how much it affects me.
Yeah. Sixth Sense is awesome. Speak No Evil from 2022 is awesome. Speak No Evil from 2024, less awesome.
Less awesome.
Um, I guess before we wrap up here, do you have anything else you want to say about Speak No Evil, the original or the remake?
I just think, Americans have to get more comfortable with reading subtitles. I mean, it's not even to think that this was a remake because it's a in a different language is a joke because the whole time during the Danish Dutch movie, they're speaking English to one another. So it's not even like a remake because of the
Because
language
that's their
there.
common language that they
That's
can
their
speak.
common language. But like you think of it as like a foreign film, I feel like Americans were looking at it as like a foreign film.
Yep.
And even looking back on it when we were talking, I remembered it as like, oh yeah, that was a foreign film. It's not. It's like a remake. But I don't, Americans just need to widen their experiences a little bit and take these movies that are coming in with lower budgets, lower production quality, and better plot lines and stories that are less influenced by by studio money. Like those are really the movies that I think people will learn to appreciate more. Same thing, like I compared this movie to um Let the Right One In, which is, I believe, a Swedish film, which was
Mhm.
done beautifully, cinematographically. It's gorgeous to watch. It's a slow burn. And then the Americans got a hold of it, and I think Let Me In was the remake version, but they did the same thing with Speak No Evil. So, learn it's great to watch those films, but go back to the originals, watch those, and that's where you'll really appreciate the art form and the story that they're trying to get across. I can talk so much. Sorry, just cut me off,
No, no,
please.
you're good. Well, no, because we'll do Let Me In and Let the Right One In, probably for our next comparison with you and I.
Yeah.
Got to figure
Ooh,
out
that
how
one
we
I
want to
love.
do that because there's three versions. Because you turned
Yeah.
me on to that TV show that I
Yeah.
haven't watched yet that I do need to. So we'll figure out time for that. I've got to dig
Yeah.
into that, but that'll probably be the next one that we do as a comparison for sure.
Oh, I would love that.
Um,
Let the Right One In is one of my all-time favorite, top
I've
10 favorite movies.
I love that. Well, and then this year we've all Becky and I have talked about possibly doing like other horror things.
Mhm.
So yeah, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and wrap up the Speak No Evil.
All
I
right.
am Jimmy with the Triple C Collective. This is
AJ from California.
my man, AJ from California. I can't thank you enough for joining me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure,
Uh,
man. It's so
thank
much
you.
fun. Literally anytime. Like you don't even like I work 3 days a week, so fill in my off days with all of that. I could talk movies nonstop. So whenever you need me, buddy.
Excellent. I really appreciate, and like we said, we're hinting at it. Let me in. Let the right one
Put the
in.
right one in. All
Movie,
right.
TV show. We'll get into that next. I want to thank everyone at home for joining us and watching us. Please like and subscribe to this video and to our channel. I hope you all stay safe, and we will see you in the real world.
Woo! Adios.
Later.
Nice.